Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to the Township of Woolwich budget meeting. Council is about to meet in closed session in a private breakout room. For those watching at home, the live stream will continue. Once the closed session ends, council will return to the open session for public discussion. We thank you for your patience. Since the publication of the revised agenda this afternoon, staff have requested an additional closed session item be added to a revised council agenda. That change is reflected in the public resolution to move into closed session, which we are about to pass, I hope. And that would be a motion that the Council of the Township of Woolwich convenes in closed session on Monday, January 17th, 2022 at 6 p.m. electronically in accordance with section 239(2) and 3.1 of the Municipal Act for the purposes of considering the following subject matters: security of the property of the municipality or local board, and for the purpose of educating or training members, that is an IT security matter, and personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that is the CAO department structure matter. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Shantz and Councillor Redekop, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Councillor McMillan will be joining us a wee bit later. He had another commitment he had to attend to. Alex, can you please move council and staff into the breakout room now? Good evening and welcome again to the Township of Woolwich Special Council Budget Meeting on January 17th, 2022. Thank you for your patience while Council was meeting in closed session. Before we begin, I will remind Council that this part of the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. And I will start with a roll call of Council. I'm Mayor Johnson present and chairing this meeting, Councillor Martin. Councillor McMillan.
Present.
Councillor Merlehan.
Present.
Councillor Redekop.
Present.
And Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Thank you. A motion that Council reconvenes in open session. Moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That's carried. We'll start with the land acknowledgement and a moment of silence. The land on which we meet has been here from time immemorial. People have inhabited southern Ontario for about 10,000 years, and we recognize the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee peoples who lived here when the settlers arrived and who share this land with us. May we together learn to care for and respect each other, our flora and fauna, and the land we inhabit together. Please join me in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, under the corporate services, under the grants, if there's any discussion around the Three Sisters Cultural Center, they are a client. If there's any discussion about advertising in the corporate services, although there's nothing specific to my business, my business does have a long-standing contract with the township.
Okay, thank you for that. Anyone else? Okay, then we'll get on with this evening and we will start with the CAO operating budget, and I will call on Chief Administrative Officer David Brenneman. And the floor is yours. Oh, unless Mr. Patrick wants to introduce him. No?
No, Madam Mayor, I'm just here as a support.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Council. Certainly, I'm just going to have Alex share a presentation. Things will be very short and sweet from my end, from the CAO's budget perspective. If you could go to the next slide, please, Alex. Just in terms of divisions, certainly you've had a presentation from Fire. We'll be speaking to Emergency Management. And also Jenna Morris, our Economic Development and Tourism Officer, will be here to speak to that portion of her budget for economic development and tourism initiatives for the upcoming year. In terms of the two key CAO budget major changes, and my apologies, I guess I was back a year, it should have said 2022. Just two key things in terms of to focus your attention to is that we continue to track COVID-related impacts out of the CAO's office. And we pay for those impacts through Safe Restart funding support. So just as you see a budget line item for COVID, there's a corresponding revenue item that balances that out. The only new thing that we are going to take from operating contingency, because it's something that we only have to do on a 3-year basis in the past, is a commitment to the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce Physician Recruitment Initiative. The City of Kitchener, the City of Waterloo, and the Township of Woolwich have all been collaborators, along with the private sector, with the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber regarding their initiative to not only bring additional family doctors to this region, but also specialists and other types of doctors that are much needed in our hospital healthcare sector. So in fairness, that's it. Everything else is status quo. But if there are any questions, happy to entertain them. For now, Alex, if I could ask you to stop sharing, but we can get back to Jenna's part, but happy to answer any questions that council may have on the CAO's budget.
Questions? Councillor Merlihan, and then Councillor Martin.
Thank you. Through you to David. Can you just elaborate more on why the physician recruitment is only a 3-year commitment and why that's only every 3 years or whatever you mentioned the 3 years? So
fair question. The Chamber of Commerce is always looking for an appropriate multi-year commitment so that they have not only just the municipal sector, but the private sector commitment. And ultimately 3 years satisfies their needs for continuity and stability. If council wanted to do more, I'm sure they would accept that. But this is the sort of commitment level that, from recollection, that we've consistently given on that level of stability for that initiative.
Okay, and can you speak to any of their success within Doctors for Woolwich, if they've specifically attracted physicians to our community? Or, I mean, I realize our community is, Kitchener-Waterloo, specifically with hospitals and such, but I'm just wondering if there's any Woolwich physicians that were recruited. Yeah.
So I like the segue that you provided. There are some nuances, to Woolwich. For example, I learned very early on the Woolwich Community Health Center and how it's funded in terms of doctors is very different than, say, the family health teams and some of those other practices. However, it does date back probably at least 10 years ago. We did help a doctor establish their practice, albeit part-time. I would note, just because I have the floor, that's another nuance that's interesting in recruiting family doctors. Not so common are the days where they have full practices where you're sitting in the waiting room as they're overbooked, for an hour for your appointment, that sort of thing. Looking for more of a work-life balance. Anyways, I appreciate that's here nor there to your question. But the only direct one, in fairness, that I can remember specifically in Woolwich was a nuance where somebody did want to work out of the Woolwich Community Health Center, and we were able to work that through. Outside of that, one of the other things that we have found is, short of a municipality, and this is my experience not only in Woolwich, but in Brant, short of a municipality establishing a turnkey operation or identifying an opportunity, because it's so expensive to set up a practice in terms of building, staffing, things of that nature, it's been very difficult. However, I would still say that while I don't have stats this evening, I would still say we still benefit when family doctors are attracted to the broader region, especially proximity to Kitchener-Waterloo. And we also benefit right across the region when we attract specialists in the area of heart or cancer or things like that to work in the broader health hospital sector. But to say, has it been an overwhelming to success that we've attracted 10 doctors? Sorry, I can't say that to council. But I do believe that, from the annual reports that council and we get, there has been a good track record of attracting family doctors and specialists to the broader region. That's all I can give you tonight, but happy to provide any additional details to council at a later date.
Okay, thank you. I've got a frozen screen here for most of you, so Pat, I trust that answers your question, and I will move on to Councillor Martin and see if we can hear him. Murray?
Yeah, I'm sure you can hear me because I'm not froze, but David answered my question as to how many people have they recruited. He's not sure, but it's been, I think I heard that it's been very successful. So my initial question was going to be if we're getting good value supporting the chamber for 3 years. And from what I heard from David, I would probably say yes.
Okay, thank you.
Could you hear me?
Yes, I could. Thank you.
Yes.
Mayor Shantz, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks for chiming in because that's good.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Brenneman, you said that it's your office that's responsible for tracking impact of COVID-19. I wonder, is there one ministry that you report that to at the province, or is there a corresponding ministry that you report each of the impacted areas to? How does that tracking and reporting process work?
Yeah. I will start, and then Richard may have something to add. My answer would be this: we do not have to track and report to the government. They provided safe restart money on 2 separate occasions to us during the pandemic, which we very much appreciate. But there are no reporting requirement for that money back to the province. We track things internally to make sure that we understand, where our spending has happened in terms of personal protective equipment, facility upgrades or changes, things of that nature, so we can better understand the impact of the pandemic and where we had to spend the money. And Richard, do you want to add anything to that I've missed?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So we do have to report to the province just on how much money we've used from the grants that we received. And I would say from a high level, we still talk about kind of what areas did we use it in, from the administrative to, protection to covering lost revenues, that type of stuff. But we don't get into the specifics of exactly what we used it for, more of the generalization. I think the way the province was looking at it was, cut the red tape, so don't overburden people in the reporting.
Follow up, Mayor Shantz?
Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. So the transfers that have been received so far, crystal ball, do we believe that will be sufficient? If it exceeds the impact, do we know what next steps would be if the transfer payments exceed what the impact was? And has there been any communication about what would be next steps if the impact exceeds the transfer payments?
Yeah, I'll start. Certainly, Richard, our Director of Finance, Mr. Petherick, has spoke, I think, to this issue before when we were talking about the Recreation Community Services budget. The fact that January certainly didn't start off the way we hoped to, and that if over the course of the year we can't mitigate any sort of Omicron, I'll call it this variant, impacts to our budget, then ultimately I would suggest to council advocacy through our MPP, both from a regional chair and heads of council across the region perspective, would probably be in order, because if we're facing it, they're facing it. However, interestingly enough, in the past, with the second round, if I recall correctly, it came much to our pleasant surprise, but not requiring a lot of advocacy. I think, as Richard's previously stated at last week's budget meetings, we hope there will be another round because it may very well be needed. But right now we are remaining as hopeful and optimistic that we can, that with the changes and fiscal changes that we've made over the last 2 budget cycles, with the increase in supplementary tax revenue, which was a nice increased windfall last year, we've been able to mitigate the storm. I guess the worst case scenario, if Richard and I were properly advising council, if there isn't another round, and if the expenditures are higher, and if we're not able to mitigate them internally, then, you know, the greatest fear that municipalities had, you know, getting into this pandemic was the type of deficits that our budgets may get into. That is the real world concern under a worst case scenario.
No, thank you.
Are there any other questions for David? Okay.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I'm going to turn things over to Jenna, but before I do that, one of the lead-ins I'd like to do is that I'd like to speak to the fact that what you're going to hear from Jenna in her presentation is a real focus on where we should be looking at things as part of COVID recovery. And instead of at the end, I really want to speak to what a great job Jenna has in terms of seeking out applications for sources of funding and opportunities that exist at different levels in the government and outside to make sure that we are going to have funding to be able to execute on some of these initiatives. She's been very resourceful in putting together this budget. So with that lead in, I would ask Alex to put up the presentation. I think it's one slide and Jenna will speak to it.
Welcome, Jenna.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Good evening. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Council. The Economic Development and Tourism budget remains fairly status quo for 2022, but I'd like to share a few notable projects. So the focus again remains as economic recovery, but some of the key projects are the tourism recovery strategy. That's working with the industry and best practices from other economic development offices to build back stronger, as well as a comprehensive business retention and expansion recovery program, Main Street placemaking projects, and ongoing business support. So continuing what we did prior to COVID and supporting businesses through grant applications and continuing with the supports prior to COVID. So it is a lot. The three large projects are a lot for a department of one. So most notably, we were able to receive funding from Wellington Waterloo Community Futures, a great partner of ours, to offset the cost of a full-time contract position. And then pending approval of another grant application for the comprehensive business retention and expansion recovery strategy, we'll be able to keep this position on through to the completion of this project. So it will be a busy year for the Economic Development and Tourism Department, but we're really looking forward to the challenge, looking forward to working with the businesses. And with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you folks have.
Okay, thanks. Questions? Okay, I'm not seeing, okay, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Main Street placemaking projects? I know there was a lot of really positive feedback about the art project downtown. And I was wondering if this was something along the same veins of the downtown art project.
Sure, I can. And thanks for the question, Councillor McMillan. Through you to, through Mayor Shantz, through to the rest of council, some of the projects that we're looking at doing is increasing art downtown Elmira, supporting the St. Jacobs Business Improvement Area on bike racks throughout the downtown, increasing greening of downtown Elmira, and supporting additional public washrooms facilities downtown St. Jacobs. So sorry, I kind of bounced back and forth from the two BIA sections, but yeah, 4 fairly large additional projects for this summer. And again, pending grant approvals, application approvals, depends on how far we can move forward on each of those, but.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Merlihan?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Jenna. I have a couple of things. I guess the first thing is the full-time contract position that you got grant funding for. I'm just, I look at the grant for the WCF, and it's 25,000. And I guess if you get the other one, I'm not sure what the price of that will be, but does 25,000 get you a full-time person for 6 months?
Thanks, Councillor Merlihan, and through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Merlihan. 25,000 gets us 50% of our contract position. So we're going to keep her on. We were able to extend her through the fall through another grant program. And she started to get to work right away before this year. She is here until May, which will then find out our next approval and funding. So yes, she approximately 50% of her contract position is paid for by 25,000.
Okay, so this is like kind of like a student intern position. It's not like somebody full-time job, like a township job. Okay. Moving along, I was wondering, there's a couple of line items like the Taste of Country promo, the Smart WR, the 10K for Explore Waterloo Region, the 2.5 for the Mennonite Story, the 5,000 for the Altmeyer Art Project, and then 10,000 for the contribution to the BIA. I'm wondering, with those line items, is that something that they could be funded from the accommodation taxes from the tourism, because those are all tourism related, rather than coming out of the general operating? And maybe that would be a Richard question, but if you know the answer, you can certainly answer it.
Yeah, so the 15,000 that you mentioned from the tourism budget, 5,000 for art, 10,000 to explore water, 5,000 to art, and the 10,000, what was the second one you listed?
There's the Explore Waterloo Region. I guess that's your cost of membership. Mennonite Story, 2.5. There's the Altmeyer Art Project, and 10,000 for the washrooms and the BIA. Just because they're all tourism related, I'm just wondering if that's a source of funding.
Yeah, so the 5,000 for the art would be offset by a tourism grant, and the 10,000 to the public washrooms would be offset from our accommodation tax. And we do have a transfer from our MAT fund into the tourism budget to offset the remainder of your list.
Okay, so we are using the accommodation taxes then where we can for our own tourism. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. That was all I had. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? Okay. Thanks a lot, Jenna, and for all your support to businesses. I hear nothing but good comments from our local businesses about the work you do. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Good night.
Good night. David, do you have anything else, or does that bring you to the end of your? No. Okay, then we'll move on to Mr. Petherick and the financial services operating budget. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm just going to share my screen. So I do have a quick PowerPoint presentation for my area. So just as a quick introduction, as soon as I get my mouse up there. So my area has three different divisions: the management of budget, accounting, and revenue. Those are the three main areas that finance focuses on. The areas of changes are mainly contained within the management of budget and revenue. And from the management of budget side, I think as some of the things we've been talking about is the 1.5% infrastructure levy. So that's contained within my budget. So that increase creates about $176,000 expenditure. As well as there's an increase in insurance premiums, about $30,000. And a little bit on that, I think what we've been finding is insurance for municipalities is getting very difficult, is very getting tough. We're very fortunate, and I still say that for us being in the insurance pool here at Waterloo Region has been super beneficial to us. We have not seen the real sizable increases that a lot of other municipalities have seen, but we are starting to see that because the pool of insurance companies that are willing to supply insurance for municipalities is shrinking quite rapidly. And so we have seen some increases to our premiums. As I said, thankfully not like we have seen in other municipalities. But for us, it's an increase of $30,000 in our premiums. We do collect that through the various program budgets and set that aside in a reserve so that it's in and out in my budget. I think one of the other things, and I mentioned it last week in my opening comments on the budget, we're expecting to see a $50,000 decrease in the One North Hydro dividend. Now that decrease is from a 2021 budget to a 2022 budget perspective, but it's in line with what we saw as the actual in 2021. And I think a little bit even to what I kind of said last week on the One North Hydro side of things, as the merger continues on, we start to see the savings from the merger from the Kitchener-Wilmot and the One North Hydro. We'll start to see those cost savings and they'll start to flow through dividends, but we won't really start to see that until 2023. And I think from that moment in time, we can start making decisions. I guess council can start making the decisions from and giving direction to staff as to whether we want to now keep what we have in our current 2022 budget as our kind of flat rate, and anything we get above and beyond that, we can put into council's choice of reserve or reserve funds, and whether we want to even look at continuing to decrease that amount in the operating budget and shift more into our reserve funds. But that essentially is going to be for a future year's discussion. Also, there is going to be a decrease budgeted for in the interest income. I think as we've seen through this whole entire pandemic, the Bank of Canada slashed interest rates. We definitely are feeling that pinch from 2020's budget. I think we put a reduction in 2021 and a further reduction we're going to see in 2022. I think what we see right now from the actuals isn't where we're going to end up at the end of the year. I think we're going to get somewhere close to what I'm budgeting for in 2022, but also hoping that the Bank of Canada, at least from our interest income side of things, is actually going to start to increase the interest rate. That will kind of benefit that line. But again, it's a crystal ball. We're not too sure exactly how this is going to sort of play itself out. A couple of other things just wanted to mention in the management and budget side. We do have that development charge amendment that is captured within my budget. I think we first started talking about it when we were talking about the Breslau Connector EA. So we started that process in 2021, and we're going to be completing it in 2022. Hopefully sometime in the spring, we'll have a public meeting on that amendment to council. I think one of the things I also talked about last week, and it's something that council has set aside they still wish to talk about, is the $56,000 that we put into the 2021 budget for the Woolwich COVID Relief Fund. So that is still contained within our 2022 budget, and looking for council's discussion on what they would like to see happen to those money in 2022. So from the revenue division side, I think one of the things to say, I forgot to put a note in my budget. I do apologize for that, but you do hopefully have seen a note that's in corporate services because the two are really connected. So what we did was we flipped, I would say, full-time salaries and part-time salaries between the two budgets. In the revenue division, we had a part-time person who actually retired in 2021, and we took that as an opportunity to basically make a full-time position sit downstairs in the finance area, but still be split between financial services and corporate services. And that position is acting like a true customer service, which really enables corporate services to have I guess, a front counter person on the main floor. Prior to that, the front counter, again, was on the second floor. So anytime people would come in, they would have something they'd want to talk bylaw. They would want to talk, parking issues, marriage licenses. We would have to send them upstairs. Well, now with the person sitting downstairs in our area, they can actually come to the front counter and basically have the one-stop shop, and everything is primarily located on the first floor. So again, what we did was we shifted the part-time monies that we had in our budget. They're now in the full-time line. And then you will see in the corporate services, you will see that their full-time salary line is dropped, and you'll see an addition in the part-time line. So essentially, as I said, it's kind of like swapping full-time and part-time positions between the two departments. The other one is we increased supplemental tax by $100,000. I can honestly, in full disclosure, say that I did not find the time, due to a variety of staffing and pandemic reasons, to really get into a really good analysis about where we're going to end up from a supplemental tax in 2022. However, I am comfortable with that number just because we do have a number of, I would say, residential properties that building permits have been taken out, and we should be able to see those realized in 2022, as well as some commercial properties that will be coming on stream in 2022 as well. So fairly comfortable with that number. I do apologize that I couldn't get to quite the analysis that I was hoping for, but I would say just with some staffing challenges, being shorthanded in finance, and we're a small department, but being shorthanded in various positions throughout the years just didn't make that achievable. So with this, Madam Mayor, I will be happy to take any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Through you to Richard. Can we expect to see large increases in our insurance premium each year? And is that because insurance is harder to get, or is it based on what the insurance company pays out from year to year?
So through Madam Mayor, being an insurance pool, really it's difficult to say how it's going to affect us, because I think the two things that happen for us is we look at how we as the pool see insurance premiums increase, and we expect to still see some pretty decent increases. Thankfully, as I said, not like the 20, 30, 40%, but still conceivably in the 10% to 15% increases. However, also being in the pool, it's how you share that premium increase. That's also the other deciding factor. We've been fairly fortunate as a municipality that we've been very risk conscious, and we've had very low claims, thankfully, to this date. We do have some outstanding claims, and if they do come to fruition, we may start to see that sort of push our premium to the little bit of the higher side and then to the lower side. But for now, this is kind of where I'm projecting. It's always hard to tell where things are going to go as we continue to go forward. As I said, the pool staff, our risk manager, as well as our broker, they do a phenomenal job to push insurance companies down to get premiums, I guess our insurance premiums, to a reasonable level.
Okay. Councillor Merlihan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Mr. Petherick. I guess I have two questions. One of them was about the insurance, so maybe we'll just continue that conversation. You mentioned that insurance is harder to get for municipalities and the pricing is going up. Is that a conversation that's starting to happen for the provincial level, where maybe they start looking at a pool type system for municipalities to get coverage? Do you know if those conversations are happening, or should they start happening then before we really run out of luck?
Yeah, so through you, Madam Mayor, I would say that having a kind of a provincial pooled system, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I mean, I think if you can receive some good pricing, that would be good. But I think sometimes, though, having the loss of the autonomous control, sometimes would kind of worry me, because depending on how it's structured, that's the part of where I would be supportive or not supportive of a provincial program. And this is where I'd say from our side, we're very unique in Waterloo Region. I think we're one of the few that have an insurance pool that has everybody in the region. I think Durham has, but not all the municipalities in Durham region have an insurance pool. But I think one of the things that we need to continue to advocate for is that joint and several liability. I know it's been a while since we talked about it at this council, but it's something I think that is still out there. I think AMO is still pushing for councils to take another look at it and start to throw their support behind their recommendations to ask the province to change that, because really that's part of what's driving up insurance premiums, is that joint and several liability where, you know, I think as the old adage goes, we could be 1% held liable, but since, you know, we're perceived to have the deepest pockets, we pay the lion's share of the claim, even though we're only 1% responsible. So I think having that legislation change, and that is really, I think, where this council can advocate for, is probably going to help, because right now a lot of insurance companies that are getting out of the market have been very concerned about municipal risk and liability. And I think it's because of that joint several liability. That's my opinion of why I think you started to see a bit of exodus from the municipal market.
Okay, thanks. My second question is, I guess, about the assessment taxes. And this year, there was a surprise 200 homes that were added, and we got a nice payout. I'm just wondering, when that happened, we talked about maybe establishing a process between the building department and the finance department, so that this isn't a surprise, that we know how many homes are being built and when we can expect to get the taxes being paid on those. So I'm just wondering if you can update us on if that is something that has started.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I think, just as I alluded to a little bit, so started the analysis process. Haven't gone as deep as I would like, but so far from the surface, I haven't seen anything that that has been outstanding like we just saw those 200 homes. Didn't see anything from that magnitude, but as we start to get into 2022, we need to really take a look at it and make sure things don't get dropped off, because we have 3 years to go back. I know for me, from a residential perspective, I not prefer to go back 3 years, because I think that's really tough on residential homeowners to be able to do that. But I think for us, we need to make sure that we still continue to take a real good hard look at it. As I said, only really started scratching into that surface. I didn't see anything really from a real quick cursory look that was really outdated. But it's something that, as we get into 2022, we need to take a better look to make sure we don't run into the same situation.
Okay, and then when I look into my line items here, bad debts, I don't have it in front of me, but I think they were up this year. And they're typically somewhere around the 75,000. Just wondering, is that like taxes mostly, or is that something else?
Yeah, so through Madam Mayor, so we have two line items. One is the tax write-off, and the other one is bad debts. So the tax write-offs, that is specific to taxes, and that is a mechanism when properties go through the appeal process, because they've been appealing their assessments. And sometimes, depending on when the appeal has been made and when it actually gets to ARB, there sometimes is a few years lag between that. And so that's what kind of captures the write-down and assessment, and the lost taxes from a township perspective only gets captured in that line. So the bad debts is different. That is a bad debt that's on our other accounts receivable. And so we typically carry about $5,000. And so far, I think the actuals you have in your budget is about just shy of 3,000. So we're still in line with that. It was the year before where we saw a pretty major increase, and that was because of the fire. That was the uncollectible fire accident, motor vehicle accident calls, which I think, as we said last week, we have a new process in place where we can obtain the insurance information directly and actually bill the insurance companies.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Actually, Richard pretty well covered the questions that I had, but I just want to make a comment on that joint and several liability, and wondering if we can put that on the agenda for future, so that we can address that.
Jeff is making a note.
And
Go
if I
ahead.
can add, if I can add, Madam Mayor, so I think as I alluded to, AMO is looking for councils to revisit that, and there's some sample resolutions. So I can work with Jeff to bring something back either on the 24th or the 31st, probably the 31st meeting for you guys to consider.
Super, thanks. Anyone else? Okay, I just have a comment about the Waterloo North hydro income, and from my perspective, I would like to see us work towards reducing the amount of that goes into the operating budget and putting the whole amount, or the excess amount, I suppose, into some kind of a reserve that we can use for whatever council decides is the best place to put that. So that's my 2 cents on that one, but I've said it before, so I'm just saying it again. Okay, anything else? Okay, very good. Thank you very, oh, Pat, go ahead.
It's okay. I was just wondering if maybe we're going to get a talk. You were going to talk about your financial system, the software. Will that come in the IT, or did you want to talk about that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so that would be best if when we get into the IT capital budget.
Okay.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Then we will move on to corporate services, operating and capital budgets. And I will call on our Director of Corporate Services, Jeff Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I'm just going to start sharing our budget screen here. So we're going to take you through 3 items on your agenda tonight through this presentation: corporate services operating, corporate services grants, and then the corporate services capital budget, which is really just IT. First, I'd like to introduce Lydia Samello. She's our deputy clerk, and she's going to take you through our grants slide, and then we can stop the screen sharing and give you some time for questions or discussion. So with that, Lydia, the floor is yours.
Good evening, councillors and Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, I'm going to, like Jeff said, do the grants portion of the report of the budget tonight, and staff are recommending the following through the report. And within the report, we have outlined some pre-approved grants for 2022. We're also outlining some unspent monies, and that was the school safety patrol, and they've indicated to us that their programming did not run in Woolwich in 2021 due to the pandemic, and they are requesting that their grant funding be carried forward into 2022, which staff is recommending. We also have the cycling into the future, and they advised us through their representatives that their grant funding was spent in 2021, but the monies were allocated towards other programming that did not benefit residents of the Township of Woolwich. And as such, staff are recommending that new funding not be granted until the previous year's granted monies are spent towards programming in Woolwich. We have 3 sisters, and this is a new request for funding, and staff are recommending a $10,000 one-time operating grant to offset their cost for running their 10-day inaugural exhibit, and that's taking place in March. We have the Woolwich Seniors Association, and they have asked for some support for their programming. They have requested $10,000. Staff are including $8,500 in the draft 2022 budget, grant budget, that will be provided through the COVID relief fund. But council may increase or decrease that amount if they require and wish to do so. Hope Spring Cancer Support Center is the other request that we received, and staff recommend that the grant application be declined, and for the following reasons. The majority of the clients are not residents of the Township of Woolwich, and the center is not located in the township. And like last year, staff are also recommending $1,500 for miscellaneous grant requests. So we have 3 new ones in addition to the ones from last year. We do have the Hope Spring Cancer Support Center, which we are recommending declining. The Three Sisters, which we are recommending $10,000 from the Municipal Accommodation Tax Fund, and the Woolwich Seniors Association, and we are recommending the $8,500 from the COVID Relief Fund. And with that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to Adela. I'm a little confused at the budget line there for cycling into the future. It shows that we didn't spend anything last year, but there's $2,500 in there for the 2022 budget. So I'm just a little confused why that would be there on that line.
Well, technically, we are just carrying it over. Spend money last year, or they spent it outside the township. So we just included in there as that's being carried over.
Oh, okay. So we haven't actually paid them the $2,500 then.
I think she's frozen. Jeff, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Sorry, through you, Mayor Shantz. I think Lydia was frozen there, and then I pressed the wrong mic button. So, sorry. So through you to Councillor Shantz. So we have prepared this budget well in advance of finding out that that group didn't spend all their money in 2021. So we are recommending that that be carried forward into 2022. So if council wishes, they can actually reduce that budget line. And that could either be used for an increase in the grants budget somewhere else, or if you wish to decrease the taxes.
Okay, if I could follow up on that, Mayor Shantz. So I would like to relook at the Hope Springs Cancer and talk about that a little bit, and if we could move that money into there, and I would know where you can get another $4,500 possibly. So it wouldn't, it would almost be a wash if we wanted to help Hope Springs out. When I asked the question when they came for the presentation, that $7,500 represents the percentage of the use by Woolwich residents. So I think I think the residents are using it, and it's available to our residents. It's a good organization, and I'd like to recommend that we support it.
Okay, Councillor Merlehan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you. I'd like to see that the seniors, the Woolwich Senior Center, get the full 10,000. They're going to be in a worse position, seeing as the WMC is closed. Their revenues are going to zero, and which just makes a tough situation tougher. I did reach out to the organization to ask if, hey, is 8,500 is that enough? And they're like, we really need the 10,000, and that was before we knew that things were being shut down. So, I would like to see us support them to the full 10,000.
Okay, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council, I think. We haven't got to the council budget yet, but there is $8,000 for training and development allotted for council. And there's also $4,500 allotted for special events. I don't know how many special events we're planning on having in the middle of a global pandemic, and I don't know how much training and development we need, given it's our last 11 months with this term. So I would support certainly the Woolwich seniors. And if we wanted to do an increase in the grant money, I think that the training and development and the special events from the council budget would be a good spot to grab that money from.
Okay, Mr. Petherick, and then I'll go to Councillor Martin and Councillor Shantz.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I think one of the things I would want to say, at least if council is supportive of the seniors grant. So as a lady alluded to in her presentation, so far the 8,500 that is currently in the budget is being funded from the COVID, the Woolwich COVID-19 is actually the monies that we, I think they turn from this year, because we haven't, sorry, 2021, if I get the right year, because we didn't spend the whole $56,000 and $20 sitting in reserve. So we are just owning it right now, just planning on taking 8,500. So if council supports taking 10, we can take the full 10 from that reserve in 2022, if council support about that.
Okay, thank you for that. I should write them down, but I've been doing pretty good. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor McMillan kind of stole my thunder. That's kind of where I was going for with finding the other monies. So I think we can probably do it without increasing the budget at all.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Did I miss you?
Yes, you did, but that's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I know it's hard to keep track of everybody. I'm not sure if I support giving the seniors more money. We give them $14,000 last year. I know I take a different position than some, but what you're talking about is they're running their program so lean, it makes it look like they're really hard done by. But I look at affordability, and there's a big gap between there. I mean, in my church, we have a big seniors program that's been very active, and they don't have their hands out for anything. They pay their own way. They go on tours, they go on trips, they go for dinners. And if somebody can't afford to go, they come along anyway. So I'm not sure why the seniors in this town are done so hard by. Three Sisters, I think I heard somebody say it's a one-time deal. I'm not sure, it never ends up being a one-time. Have we ever given them money before? That's a question I need. I'm not sure if I'm supportive of that. Cycling the Future, I said before, that should come right out of our budget line, because they won't be going back to schools for a year or two with this COVID thing, because they can't even go in. And if we ever get back to whatever's normal and they can get back in their school program, I think we can look at it there. What else was there? Hope Spring, I'm not sure. I know what Larry's saying, and if I look back at the presentations they made, the seniors, Hope Spring, and Three Sisters, Hope Spring by far made the best presentation of any of them. My arm could be twisted on that one, but we're in tight with this budget. We got a big increase, and to just give out money. I mean, we've been criticized before, saying that people always just go to council. You'll always get it. And I don't think that should necessarily be the case.
Okay. Richard, did you want to respond to any of that? I'm not sure if there's really a question there. I think it was more comments. I can say that Three Sisters is a new center, so I can add that into the mix.
Yeah, if I can respond. So I think last year council did give Three Sisters a small grant, but this is a bit of a different request in 2022. They're asking for it, and I think as the latest presentations alluded to, the funding source for the 10,000 requests is coming from the municipal accommodation tax. So it's not going to be something that is going to have a levy impact. If that weighs in the council's decision or not, I would just add that as a commentary.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Redicott.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the Three Sisters, it's a new cultural center. The BIA is really in favor of it. And this is sort of a grand opening. Hopefully they can have people in March. And I think it's a really good organization that's a startup. And it will help in many ways in the cultural milieu of St. Jacobs. So I would be in favor of giving them the $10,000 for their operating budget.
Okay, thank you. So I've heard a couple things. I've heard grant cycling to the future, that unspent money, and I've heard don't grant it. I've heard increase the Woolwich Seniors Association, and I've heard to give the grant application for Hope Springs, which I think was $7,500, the request. And I've heard a couple of places that can be taken from our council budget or from the COVID relief fund. Did I summarize that fairly well, Jeff?
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, through you. Yes, I think you did a good summary of that. If you wished, we do have a resolution sort of included in the package and in that report for council. I think we did hear that we can carry forward some unspent monies from school safety patrol and cycling into the future. I think we would need a resolution if you can direct us to advise if, because I think I heard both council in favor and opposed to maybe an increase in Woolwich seniors for the full amount that they requested, which was the 10,000. And then I think, I'm not sure we heard a clear answer from all of council if council did wish to grant Hope Spring Cancer Support Center their request, which was, as you said, $7,500. So if council wanted to put a resolution on the floor, we could do that. And then of course, we could come back in the next budget session with what that would look like in terms of either reductions elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brenneman, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just because council has weighed into an area that I wanted to touch upon earlier, but later, but felt that I wanted to speak up. So in preparing the council committee budget, I'll be very transparent. It's something Mr. Smith and Mr. Patrick and I often talk about is that in the future, I think we need to consult with council earlier as part of the budget process about this particular budget, because there are often debates and discussions about levels of funding for different parts of council's committee budget. And, one of the things, once we had really completed the budget process that I know Jeff, Richard, and I talked about was the fact that, and I respect the fact, Councillor McMillan, that you've said, one of the areas, what are we really going to be doing as a council in terms of professional development, conferences, workshops, things of that nature. However, I need to draw to council's attention that as we go out of the pandemic, there may be a need for example, the mayor and appropriate representation either from council or staff to attend the AMO conference. We've always had a presence there in front of the province, in front of the ministers, things of that nature. I also know that there's been a pretty unique opportunity that just recently came up following the budget. Doug Griffiths, the gentleman that came to speak not only in Woolwich, but if you recall, to a region-wide council meeting on 13 ways to kill a community, is offering in his home province of Alberta a very unique opportunity, I think, for both council and staff that may wish to participate in terms of offering strategic plan development, community economic development, overall municipal leadership, collaboration and innovation opportunities, things of that nature. So I would just caution council I caution council as follows. One, be careful about how much you might consider drawing on the council professional development. I appreciate Councillor McMillan, your thinking and thought process on that. I just would be cautious on that. Alternatively, I appreciate it's all about how we balance things. At the very least, I guess that if there are opportunities, unique professional development opportunities or conferences that come up, that there also though may be an open mind that as we try to balance the budget and the tax rate, that other sources of maybe one-time funding, like the operating contingency or any surplus funds, be used potentially as a source of funding. So I was going to wait until 3.5 to bring that up, but because council ventured into that, I just want to put that caution before council, and happy to answer any questions you may have about that perspective.
If it was a bad idea, I just want everyone to know Larry said it was his idea.
Councillor Shantz, go ahead. I say reluctantly.
I just want to assure Councillor McMillan it was a good idea. My only question on that is sending somebody to Alberta, for instance, this late in your term of council, is that a wise move? I can see that being a good move at the beginning of a term of council, but when we only, like Councillor McMillan said, we only have 11 months left. What's the advantage of sending somebody at that point, possibly not going to be there for the next term? People will decide, I guess.
And that, you said that's in the summer?
I think it's the end of April.
Okay. So before campaigning would be happening. Okay, does anyone on council want to put forward a motion, or do you want staff to come back with something next week or Thursday, sorry? Larry?
I think we could wait till something comes back, because if we can go through the whole budget, maybe we can find those monies and that'll make a difference as to how we vote. So I would suggest we wait until we get to the end of the budget deliberations.
Can I just sort of get a sense from council about particularly the Seniors Association one and the Hope Springs one, so that'll help staff? Councillor McMillan?
If the Woolwich seniors can just be another 2,500 out of the COVID relief, and that's what that money was kind of set aside for, I would be in favor of doing that tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I see thumbs up from a few councillors on that. So do you want to make that motion if you want to do it tonight?
If Councillor Merlehan wanted to move it, he's been interacting with the senior center the most. If Councillor Merlehan wanted to move it, I would second it.
Okay, before we do that, Jeff, did you want to chime in?
Yes, through you, Mayor Shantz. I think I heard $2,500, but the difference between what the Woolwich seniors are asking for and what we've recommended is $1,500. I think Rich would be mad at me if I didn't look at that math there.
Yes, I did write 15 on my page here. Councillor Merlehan, did you want to address that?
Only that I would move that motion. For the
Okay,
50 out of
so
the
that's, yep, very good. Seconded by Councillor McMillan. Discussion? Councillor Martin?
Exactly what are we doing here? Are we just giving them 85 or less?
We're giving them $10,000. The extra 1,500 to make up the 10,000 is coming from the excess in the COVID relief fund. Okay, all those in, sorry, did you have a comment before we vote?
Well, I have a comment on some of the others.
Okay.
Hope Spring. Staff recommended that we don't give them anything and had good reason. I think we've turned them down before. Some think 7,500 is okay. I would go in between. I would say I'd be prepared to give them 5. 3 sisters, I would give 5. And the seniors, I'd give them 5.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to add 1,500 to the 8,500 that's already here. To give the just for the seniors is the only piece we're dealing with at the moment. And it would be to give them $10,000. So that's a motion that's on the floor for now. I appreciate your comments, Murray, but that's the motion that we're voting on. Any other comments on that motion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you, and that's carried. In terms of the Hope Spring, then, do you want to deal with that tonight, or do you want staff to bring that back? Larry?
I think we could bring it back, but I would be prepared to make a motion that we give them $7,500. If we'd have a seconder.
Councillor Merlehan, you're seconding that?
No, I just wanted, I don't have a problem potentially granting that money, but I do want to see where some of the other money shakes out before we do that, if that's okay with Councillor Shantz. But I'm more on board than whatever, but I really want to see it all kind of together, because I think there's some other areas we can look at too.
Okay. So I've had two councillors express approval, or what's the word, that they want to give the grant the application to Hope Springs. I've heard one who wants to reduce the request. Councillor Reddicup, Councillor McMillan, where do you stand? Rough, yeah, Councillor.
I fall in line with Councillor Shantz and Councillor Merlehan. I'm happy to do the grant tonight. I'm also happy to wait and see where the money comes from, and kind of make sure that the I's are dotted and T's are crossed before we make a final decision.
Okay, Councillor Reddicup disappeared. There he is.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of granting them $7,500.
Okay, so we will leave that with Mr. Petherick to bring back for Thursday, and we can discuss where we find that money from. But thank you. So I'm going to ask either Jeff or Richard, what do you want to do with the rest of this recommendation? Are you satisfied to bring it back on Thursday, or do you need more direction? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I think we have enough direction, at least to bring this back to council. So we can add the $1,500 for the seniors, and we can look at funding alternatives for council to discuss for Hope Springs.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on the grant recommendations then? Okay, thank you. And thank you to Lydia for bringing that forward. Mr. Smith, I think you have some more budget work for us.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I do. I'm just getting my slide up and to the next area here. So just going over the clerk's division, in terms of 2022 budget highlights, we are looking at a new operating section for corporate communication costs. So you'll see that additional reporting in our budget there. And then also within that budget, a small line for professional services. They could be things like consulting or photography, really to help us get our communications, move it farther ahead. You'll also see in our budget, a budget line for the 2022 election, municipal and school board elections. That's approximately $80,000 funded from the election reserve. And then in terms of 2022 budget initiatives, you'll see, of course, the election is a big part, but you'll also see in our work plans some work trying to implement a social media policy, refine our communications work, and further development of the website. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the clerk's division.
Any questions on that one? Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. Through you to Jeff, just a clarification in your division there, the full-time salaries, looks like it's gone down, but you're talking about having including election assistants. Did that go down because we switched some of the staff over from finance? And if you add those two together, is that what we're getting? Is that the reason?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Shantz, that budget line, the full-time salaries has gone down for two reasons, partly because of the switch, as Mr. Petherick talked about, with the full-time person moving into into financial services, and then us picking up the part-time position. But that part-time salary line, as you so rightly point out, does include a small portion for an election assistant for 2022. And that's the plan there, is really just to help us with running that election, especially when things start to get busy.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, carry on.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. I'm going to just bring up the next slide here. So just again to introduce our manager of IT, Barry Girth. He'll be bringing you through, both the IT division, operating and capital. So Barry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. So just some highlights from the operating budget, just with regards to some of the changes. So website costs are shifting to the clerk's budget to better reflect who the primary owner of the management of the website is. The savings things shift around a little bit. So the corporate enterprise software GL or budget, the savings in there are coming from a shared ELA or an enterprise license agreement we have with Esri that we've entered into with the townships of Wilmot and Wellesley, in which the cost is being split between the 3 townships. So it helps all 3 townships out, just reduce the cost with regards to the Esri licensing. Again, there's the enhanced office licensing for staff to improve productivity. So that's the Office 365 licensing that we're looking to change or change the model that we're using. And then there's enhanced security services that we're implementing as well this year. Jeff, you can go to the next slide. For the capital budget, there's 4 main line items for IT services specifically. Again, we're continuing to shift to a 6-year PC replacement cycle. So that's happening. What we're finding with regards to the pandemic and work from home, different work from home initiatives, PC replacements are involving a lot more laptops this year to aid in creating a more mobile and flexible workforce. Copy replacement is kind of a standard thing that we do on a regular cycle to improve the equipment that staff use. Server infrastructure improvements really are designed to lengthen the useful life of the equipment. And again, we have a security-based project that we're planning for this year. Again, security-based projects and services in the operating capital are intended to continue to strengthen our security posture. As for initiatives, we have ongoing maintenance and security monitoring, as well as all the other projects that are placed on our deck from various departments. With that, that's really kind of all I have to say, but I'm available to answer questions if there are any.
Questions? Councillor Merlehan, and then I think Councillor Shantz was at a hand.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Girth. The full-time equivalents went from 2.8 to 3. Is that the change in the website stuff moving away from your department? Okay, I see Jeff nodding yes. Okay, so we'll just move on. The enhanced office licenses, are those something that you would purchase for council as well? Like, is that a cost that the municipality is paying for? I'm just curious.
We would be looking to purchase official Office 365 licenses for all the council as well. That may exclude the mayor only because a lot of what her equipment gets covered by is from the region. So that has to be discussed a little bit, but yes, we would look to outfit all of council with an Office 365 license, granting them access to Teams, granting them access to all the online services as well, and as well as full Office productivity suite.
Yeah, that's where I was just thinking. For me, I wouldn't use any of it unless it's something we have to. I mean, I have stuff at home, and I don't. I would just wonder how useful that expense would be. It would probably be a wasted expense for the most part. For most of council, I'm guessing, but me anyway. So that would be something if you wanted to reduce mine anyway to save some money.
And maybe that's a discussion with council to say, is this something that is required? Is this something that is needed? And if not, then if not, and if yes, then we can go ahead, right? But,
yeah, like would there be any added functionality that staff is going to start sending reports a different way or whatever that we would have to
not necessarily. I mean, because you're using eScribe for the packages, I mean, there is the opportunity to use OneDrive or SharePoint within the Office 365 environment for sharing of documents and different information. So there's that aspect of it. Again, I don't know if council wishes to use like a full Microsoft Office suite, or if they have another platform that they use. I know Open Office is a popular one as well. But yeah, it's open for discussion, it's open for decision, right? So, but I had been planning for it, but it doesn't mean that we have to go forward with that. So,
okay. Can you maybe you want to wait till the capital? I was just, we have a 6-year replacement now on the PCs. What is our replacement on servers? And I didn't have time to go back to our past budgets and everything, but it just seems I've been through a lot of these budgets, and it seems like there's a lot of expenses in servers, multiple servers, virtual servers that were, backup over backup over backup, and I get, but are we like, how often are we replacing our servers? I just know you can get a decade out of the server. Probably not. It might need a little more maintenance, but how often do we replace our servers?
So originally we were scheduling replacements every 5 years, mainly because that is the support and maintenance agreement, the length of time that we could get from vendors. What a few years ago council had asked to expand it, so we are looking at expanding it to 8 years for replacement cycles. That does really push it to the end of the maintenance and supportability of the equipment, and that also plays with the insurance conversation with regards to various coverages that may be involved. So we have to kind of see where things go with regards to insurability. We also have to see, the idea is that we don't want to run equipment that is not supported and no longer has patches being made available, so that, as new vulnerabilities come out, now we have equipment that's vulnerable to attack. So those are the things that we have to kind of balance out with regards to how long do we keep it versus when do we replace it. So that's what I would say with regards to that. We are endeavoring to expand it out to 8 years, and looking at alternate support companies that will extend the support beyond what the typical vendor will do.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, have we looked at what it would cost, like the cost benefit of leasing the server equipment rather than purchasing it outright and, return it at the end of its life and get new and start a new lease?
I have personally not looked into the leasing aspect. only because I know that it does require council approval. But if that's a direction, and I have been approached by various vendors to inquire about the leasing option. But if that's a direction that you would like me to investigate, I can investigate that a little deeper.
Yeah, I'd be interested in
Yep.
seeing the option. Lots of big corporations go that route. I don't know what the benefit is. I don't know if it's cheaper or whatever, but then you're guaranteed, new equipment after a certain time period. But yeah, I'd be curious. Thank you.
Okay, no problem.
Can I test that out with the rest of council? Councillor McMillan, did you want to speak to that or something else?
I had a different question, but I would support if Barry's got people approaching him. It doesn't sound like it would be too hard to have them put something together that he could bring to council, as long as it's not, Barry going out there and doing all the research. Just maybe pass along what somebody's bringing to him. I'd be open to that.
Okay, rest of council, I'm seeing some nodding heads. Yeah, okay. Good. So you can get that to us. That probably wouldn't be for Thursday's budget, but
Something
sometime.
I can work on over the course of the next few months or year and stuff like that, and come back with some answers.
Sure, thanks. Councillor McMillan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Barry, you talked about the importance of having equipment where patches are available and the attacks that protects against and the liability that we're exposed to if we don't have those patches. That might seem intuitive to somebody who works in IT, but could you explain that to somebody like me who doesn't know what type of attacks you're talking about and what type of liability that opens the township up to?
Sure. I mean, there's a number of ways of attack. I mean, the most popular one is obviously ransomware, right? So ransomware gets in through various mechanisms. They're no longer looking at brute force hacking. A lot of it comes in through phishing and trying to get people to give up credentials, that kind of thing. When we talk about vulnerabilities that are exposed in servers or various pieces of equipment, what we're talking about is somebody being able to access a portion of that system through a vulnerability or through a way that wasn't originally designed or intended to be used that way, but allows them to run another program on top of what's there and add malicious activity or do malicious actions against or on that server or on that piece of equipment. So things that I've seen, it's not a recent thing, but there was a news report a number of years ago about a casino getting data exfiltrated, and the way that the attacker gained access to their data network was through a fish tank thermometer. It was wireless. It was connected to the network. They were able to hack in, and from there, they were able to move across that device into other systems where they were extracting personal and basically the customer data, and they were seeing all the traffic route through the internet through the fish tank thermometer or thermostat or sensors. So those are the things that we have to kind of watch for, right? And you look at the Nest equipment, you look at all these different smart home technology that is trying to be utilized within a corporate environment. The understanding is that not all smart devices are created equally and with a security mindset in play. So we have to be very cautious, very careful on what's implemented, how it's provided, how it's provisioned, and what the security mindset is of these companies. From servers, right? There's numerous vulnerabilities that get exposed, and Microsoft issues patches, our hardware vendors issues patches to cover off those and to close those holes or close those gaps to prevent that inadvertent activity or that malicious activity from happening. Does that answer the question, or did I confuse things more?
Yeah, no, that definitely, the example helps. I think the other one that I was thinking of was that Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, where the jet fuel pipe, it was hijacked by ransomware, and they demanded $4.5 million to return functionality to the pipeline network. That was back in May, I think, of last year. So I don't think that people like me necessarily understand that this is the type of thing. It's not, you walking around to people's computers and hitting Control Alt Delete and getting them to work again. It's a serious liability. And as much as we're liable for potholes, we heard Jared talk about our liability with potholes and if damage is created that way. There's liabilities that we have with people's personal information and stuff like that, and the use of our networks and all that kind of stuff. So the examples certainly help paint a picture for us there.
Yeah, and the problem is that even if the data is returned, so to speak, or released, that does not mean that the perpetrator will actually delete the information. What they're finding is that they will continually come back again and again saying, hey, we still have this data, you need to pay us again or we're gonna publish it again, right? So they're like double or triple dipping against the same people because they actually have possession of that data. So again, a lot of the security things that we're trying to implement or looking to implement or considering on implementing is really a means of trying to prevent that from even happening, right? It's great that, there may be insurance available or whatever. However, to not have to deal with that or dip into that is always better, right? So, yeah.
Thank you.
That said, I would add that I'm reluctant to push our equipment to the very end of their viable life cycle, if that's the right term. Especially if that's going to increase the chance of hackers getting in. Mr. Smith, I just want to make you a counselor tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz. Just to pick up on what Mr. Gerst said a little earlier, as council asked us, we did look into extending the life of our hardware in our servers, and we did extend that from the 5 to the 8 years, but we only did that with service contracts for the additional service contracts for the additional life that we're using. So they are still covered.
Okay, as long as you're fully confident that we are secure. Okay, thank you. Councillor Shantz.
Mine wasn't a question as so much as to a response or a comment. And I like the part where you're saving money because you're sharing with other townships. And I think the more we can do that, I think the better we are off. And I'm glad to see that's happening. I know we're doing that in other departments as well, but that's just one area where these staff members are trying to save us some dollars. So I'm glad to see that.
Thank you. Good comment. Anyone else? Mr. Patrick.
Dear Madam Mayor, I didn't want to leave the IT capital without getting back to Councilor Merlehan's question about the financial software. I think he was asking me that as part of my budget, but this is the time to kind of bring that up. So in the 2022 capital budget under software, we have $200,000 as a potential first phase of a two-phase with an additional $100,000 in 2023. So the first thing and the rationale and the reason why is because we are really outgrown our existing financial software. The outgrowth is really coming on both from the property and the utility side. More on the utility side. With a growing municipality, we have so many records within our system that we're just finding that it is just really chugging down. And I guess probably the simplistic terms is when we're doing our postings and when we're doing not just postings within the system itself, like just within utilities, but when it transfers over and data gets into our general ledger to show what our expenses and revenues and all of that start to look like. We're finding that we've had some issues. We've had some problems that we've needed the vendor come in and kind of help us work stuff out. I think we must tap Barry on the shoulder. I don't know how many times to say, please help us with this. And I know he's sick of coming and helping about it. So we're at the point that we really need to look and do some investigation about replacing it before we get beyond the point that it becomes unfunctionable for us. And that's just a factor, I think, of us just being a growing municipality and having more customers and having more properties on our system. So really the 300,000, I would say we've done some preliminary investigation. We found something that I would say is very pricey and very expensive. But that 300,000 for me is the worst case scenario. We need to go through a whole competitive process to find the best value that I guess the combination of the best value, the best functionality, but as well as that, I think we need to find a system that better communicates with our customers, because right now our existing system lacks in that department is the best way I would say it. And I think we can find a better solution. We can find a better product. That's for sure. Technology has come such a long way since we last implemented our current software. So at least for the 2022 program, that 200,000 is covered, 150,000 from the provincial modernization money we received a number of years back. We still have some money left in that pool. And we're looking at using 150 of that, and the remaining 50 will be from our water and sewer reserve fund. So it's not a levy impact. That's not what we're trying to propose. But we want to at least have money in the budget to go through the investigation this year to see if we can actually get on replacing that. Because we know it's going to take a while for us to replace that, because it does have an implementation plan that at times can be quite involved. And so for us, we want to at least go through the process of going through an RFP. And then once we have gone through that process, we can bring something back to council before we proceed forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Larry? Councillor Shantz?
Follow up on my last comment. When I saw that line, my question was, what is the city of Waterloo and city of Kitchener and the region, what kind of software do they use, and can we piggyback there at all? And because they would have way more customers than we would. So just asking that question if we looked into that.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I believe Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge, I believe they're all in different systems. And and when you're looking at a financial program, it really crosses multi areas, and their type of systems are far beyond our economic needs to be able to tap into. It's far beyond what we're able to afford. I even know from a township level, we at least were all on different systems, but I know Wilmot is looking at implementing a new one as well as Wellesley as well. So I mean, we may see if we can find some synergies to that. But at the moment, we're all in different systems. But I know a couple of us besides ourselves are looking at different solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I don't see any. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Girth. And Mr. Smith, does that bring us to the end of your budget?
Sorry, Mayor Shantz, I've got a few more slides for you. I'm going to do the next two together if that's okay. So just switching over here to the bylaw enforcement division. In terms of our 2022 budget highlights, we do have some fuel and maintenance savings with the purchase of a hybrid vehicle that council may remember they provided pre-approval for that in December. We have issued that purchase order and we are in the queue for our truck. Still, I think looking at that 6 to 8 month time frame, but hoping to get that delivered before the end of 2022 for sure. We are looking at continuing the bylaw enforcement consultant contract. We had started with a half year of that, so moving that to a full year for about $6,000. We're looking at some initiatives to increase uptake in dog tag revenue. And we have actually seen that work out in the past year for us. So we want to continue with that. And then I also want to note that we have not included any significant increase in service for the bylaw enforcement division, but we will monitor calls for service during 2023 and look at investigating options. Or sorry, we'll monitor calls for service during 2022 and investigate any options for 2023 if needed. And then the second slide I wanted to bring you before we paused was just crossing guards, and we're not proposing any significant changes for 2022. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about crossing guards or bylaw enforcement.
Any questions on those two? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so carry on.
Okay, right back into it. I'm just going to take you through the last two slides of our presentation tonight. So the Human Resources Division, I would like to introduce Shelley as well at this time. Shelley Noble is our Human Resources Generalist, and she and I can answer any questions that you have about the Human Resources Division. So for 2022, our highlights are a new subscription in advertising that we're hoping to save on advertising costs. So far, we've seen some savings there, and we're projecting about $1,600 in savings for 2022, net of the addition in the in the subscription cost. The other big change to the budget, or big thing I guess I want to mention in the budget, is continuing with the job equity and market evaluation that we started in 2021, and that's about $9,000. In terms of 2022 initiatives, there's a lot of work that IT has to do. Of course, continuing to manage changes with the pandemic, but also reviewing our employee orientation and training program, and then continuing to review corporate policies in HR. And finally, just on the corporate overhead side, Council will note that Mr. Patrick already advised a big change to the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund grant that we received from the province. That is being reduced by $57,000, and that's probably one of the biggest pressures in corporate services. So that ends my presentation tonight, and Shelley and I are here to answer any questions about human resources or corporate overhead.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Shelley. Any questions for Mr. Smith or Ms. Noble? No, I'm not seeing any. Very good. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to Mr. Patrick, who's going to discuss the council and committee budget.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is the last budget to go through, and that would be your own budget. There really isn't too many changes that we made from 2021's budget to 2022's, saving except for I think a little bit of what we've talked about already as the training and development for council. We have added $3,000, and I would imagine that that might garnish some discussion tonight. So with that, it's a pretty status quo budget as far as I'm concerned, with some inflationary changes here and there. But with that, council have any questions and discussion amongst yourselves.
Questions? Councillor Shantz and then Merlehan.
Yeah, so what I alluded to earlier, I was thinking that the meeting expenses and the special events, I guess, were the two lines that I was looking at that we could probably lower to $1,500, and then that would garner $4,500 to go towards the other project, the other grant money. So that was a suggestion that I would like to make.
I'm not sure what went in those lines, but I would think one would be the state of the township, and maybe the mayor's breakfast for the Maple Syrup Festival would be the two special events that come to my mind. And I think the Maple Syrup Festival is going virtual again this year. Are they? We're not sure. Okay. We're hoping they don't have to, but okay. Anything else on that? Mr. Brenneman, did you want to weigh in before we go to Ms. Councilor?
No, I just wanted to underscore that I believe you're right, Madam Mayor, is that, and this is the awkwardness, is that yes, that could be possibly where you reduce the special events, but if the mayor wants to host a State of the Township, and then says, no, we don't have the money, can't do it, then, that's the awkwardness. And you know what, I understand it's a bit of like looking into a crystal ball. Could we come out of this the other side and we have a State of the Township on all these other opportunities that people can attend in person? Absolutely. On the other hand, yeah, we could budget for it and we get another variant and nothing's happening. So that's been the difficulty in essence, though, and I think Richard would agree, and the rest of senior management, trying to put the 2022 budget together with, I'll call it a hopeful optimism that we will be able to do in-person events like State the Township. Again, because we've talked as regional CAOs across the region and even various department heads that we're really gonna need to budget for even other types of special community events where we bring people back together in person and things of that nature. And provide those opportunities. So again, sorry to be the devil's advocate and the caution, but those are things I think council should consider, as they're making adjustments or potential cuts.
Councilor Merlehan?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Shantz, just on the events and on the training and everything. I know that this council, the last council, didn't really take the opportunity for training sessions and all that. I do lots of my own training, for my own professional development within my job, and I do look at it different. There was lots of things that I'm interested in learning more as a township councillor. I didn't really find too many opportunities to do that through like AMO and stuff like that. I was able to do a couple of how to be a councillor type sessions at the beginning of both my starts, which were very helpful, and I would recommend that to any member of council to do, because it's a good way to get started. And if you look through this budget, any of the department budgets, we're spending hundreds of thousands on training for our staff, and we do see the value in that for developing people, and we don't see it within ourselves because we haven't made use of the training budget, and unfortunately the last 2 years there was something I would have been into, but was canceled, and I did go to AMO, and I didn't find for me as a counselor it being a benefit to myself personally for development, or a benefit to the township that I gained any kind of new skill. But when I look at conferences and I look at training opportunities for myself and my own professional development, I look at the cost and I decide, okay, will this give me a good idea? Will I be able to get one idea that I can make money from, or improve a process at work, make a connection with certain types of people that will do it. And if I can get one element and get one takeaway that does benefit the business, then I look at the cost as easy to look at. And so when David brought up the Doug Griffiths event, I got to know Doug through the Somebody Should Do Something event through Woolwich Healthy Communities. The township, paid $5,000 to help us bring him to speak to the community. It was an excellent event, and we got a lot of things in motion at Woolwich Healthy Communities, including events, an event group, and unfortunately, right as soon as things started getting going, it all got shut down. So now we're in the process of, trying to pick up the pieces from pre-COVID and put things back into play. So I continue to communicate with Mr. Griffiths. He runs online webinars that I participate in about economic development, strategic planning. It's involved with politicians across North America. So this opportunity that he's presenting is a leadership camp. There's a lot of stuff in there that I was texting with him the other day and said, because the agenda just came out on Friday, and I said, did you design this for me? Because almost everything in there was something that I feel I could benefit as a township councillor and bring ideas back to help us strategize for the future. One of the big things is strategic planning. He takes a complete different approach to strategic planning and than what municipalities certainly do. And I know David's been quite interested in that. And David's also communicated with Mr. Griffiths and participated in the webinars. They've been excellent. So this is something that's happening in April. I would actually love to take part in it. And I feel like there's enough things on the agenda that we can come back with some strategic ideas and it's ideas in communication, leadership. I mean, there's the leadership thing is certainly I could always use improving there and see how other people and other leaders deal with constituents and everything. I mean, this job is a learning experience. You don't get to a certain point and you know everything. You have to continue to want to learn about it, and I see that as being a real benefit. This has been probably the best opportunity that's come along since my time on council, that I actually think that it could be a contributing, benefiting factor for council to continue on. And the fact that it's 11 months before an election, I don't think is relevant. Usually when I go do training for myself, unfortunately, it's been a lot of online stuff. But if I can get one idea out of it, I implement those ideas, immediately. That if they're good enough there's a proven track record of that, that's going to come back and benefit the township through my participation, David's participation for sure. So I would like those line items to actually be increased a little bit so that Mayor Shantz would be able to continue to go to AMO, which will probably be on, and David and I participate in the leadership conference.
Well, hey, I'd like the leadership conference too. But the thing with AMO, and I know you said you didn't get much out of it, is about networking and creating relationships with other levels of government, more than actually a learning experience. But Councillor McMillan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Shantz. I don't think Councillor Shantz or myself suggested that professional development doesn't have value. So I think a lot of the arguments about the value in professional development certainly doesn't speak to what I was speaking to. Obviously, professional development is key in any area. And Councillor Merlehan's right that If you stop learning as a counselor, it's probably time to stop being a counselor. We got to keep learning. But I wouldn't support, I would push back that it doesn't matter that it's 11 months before an election. You can come back from a professional development seminar and implement something in your business that day, because that's how business runs. You don't have to have an agenda item put on an agenda, wait until the board meeting a month from now, discuss it, get 3 other people on board, and then go through, the budgeting process. Well, there's nothing in the budget for this year, so it can't happen this year. I mean, if this conference is in April, and I think it's a little bit crazy that we're talking about one specific conference and not just generally speaking. But let's say that this one specific conference is in April. We go in April, back in May, we don't have council meetings generally on the regular schedule in July. Like, the odds of us being able to implement anything coming back before summer is I think a little bit far-fetched. And so then you're looking at September, October, and there's an election in November. So I certainly am on board with the value of professional development. And I think we as a council had talked about having a seminar with us in our council chambers on the role that council can play in planning, talking about, how do we grow Woolwich and what's the role that council can have. That was in 2019. Obviously, that got shut down in 2020. I think that was the budget for 2020 that we talked about doing that, and then COVID made that so that it couldn't happen. So obviously, professional development is incredibly important. I think I would support the mayor going to AMO because of the networking opportunities that I think everybody has spoken about. But I have a hard time seeing that there's value in professional development, generally speaking, when we're already in January and we got 11 months left in our term. There's just not enough runway to implement things that come out of it. That being said, staff aren't going anywhere after 11 months. So if we as a council wanted to support staff doing professional development in areas that this council sees is valuable, I think that makes a lot of sense. Staff are, generally speaking, still going to be here after December of 2022. But I couldn't in good conscience on a taxpayer's dollar go to a conference right now, understanding how much I'm going to be able to get done. And I don't think that it would be smart for us as a council to do that either. But that's not about the value of professional development in any way whatsoever.
So are you suggesting a change to the training and development line, or are you okay with the 8,000 that's in there?
I'm open to leaving it in for things like what Mr. Brenneman talked about. I don't know if that AMO conference, if the mayor's budget for that comes out of that. I don't know if council were to direct staff to attend a specific conference, if that would have to come out of council's budget. I certainly would be open to leaving it in there, but I do think that none of us have a crystal ball, but I have a tough time finding out how we're going to spend, $13,000 in 11 months on the types of things that are budgeted for there.
Mr. Patrick, did you want to give us some insight?
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, I mean, ultimately, I think training and development, is definitely a council call. And I think if council sees fit that, there are training opportunities that will benefit the corporation, whether it be from a professional development that comes back to council and in turn gets implemented from our perspective. I think one of these I would even look at training and development. Sometimes though, it comes back into an idea that comes back. It may not necessarily come in this term of council that maybe get implemented, but sometimes what happens is that going to an event actually sparks an idea that in turn through a year or through the months actually gets implemented. It may not even be the person that went, elections are elections. I just throw that out there that sometimes you just don't necessarily see somebody go from start to finish with the whole thing. Sometimes they just bring back an idea and that idea in itself gets implemented.
Mr. Brenneman?
I guess the other thing I think Richard would echo is this, if there is difficulty and lack of support for the timing and any increase, at the very least, one of the things that myself and Jeff and Richard have talked about is, for the future, we don't want to set ourselves up for a difficulty. What I mean by that, at the very least, either keep the funding in there or slightly increase it so that next year, at the very least, when you're setting a council budget, you're not behind the 8 ball trying to find an increase. Because, I can tell you that any of the opportunities that council would participate in that would take you into another community or another province, wherever the case may be, when you think about 3 or 4 days and the opportunities that exist there and the cost of all that, there is a cost to that. But I do agree with, I think there is alignment in what all members of council are saying, in the sense of, there is support for professional development, because every member of council should take an opportunity to participate in development and bring back information that can not only help them, but help the corporation, help the community, and things of that nature. So, again, being the voice of devil's advocate and caution, at the very least, do not decrease, because one of the things that we even see on our staff training and development, it's not at the level still that we're going to need to have that we had pre-pandemic. And so the more reductions you make, the harder it is to get back to the level that we're going to need in the future. So, whatever council's decision they're going to make in the end, the one big caution I would make, is not definitely on reducing, because I think Richard would agree, as I said, that just makes it harder to increase the budget when we have to have the debate in 2023 with the new council on this particular subject. So that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. I'll get to you in a second, Pat. The other thing is we'll need a certain amount for training of a new council. Go ahead, Councilor Merlihan.
Yeah, thank you. Through you. Just, I guess, some general comments. I didn't mean to offend Councillor McMillan in any way, talking about the benefits of training. I wasn't saying anything other than what I know for my own professional development. I can tell you that this council has benefited from my training on several occasions from things that I did and was working on, and made, at the AMO, both AMO training sessions that I went to, they were overnight sessions. I got a hotel and I paid for it myself and didn't get redeemed, and that's fine. But made connections with other councillors in the same situation and kept in contact. And there was lots of council members that had been on council for years and got refreshers and stuff. So having those conversations with them that had led to other questions during budget or throughout the year when things come up. Those are the benefits of some of these conferences, meeting other people in the same situation and trading war stories. I do it in my newspaper profession. I talk to newspaper people across Ontario, and it's amazing what you can learn. I was on the Ontario Municipal Water Association for 2 years. I went to a conference that the board paid for. I again spent 2 nights in Niagara Falls. I paid for the hotel myself and didn't get reimbursed. And I made connections in the water community across Ontario. And that directly benefited Woolwich Township for certain situations that council's aware of because of the contacts that I was able to make through that being on the board. So, you know, to be a cynic and to say that, you know, somehow this was connected to an election or whatever. I've spoken with staff for 7 years and had lots of ideas with staff that have come from other sources other than just being on council. And those ideas have made it through the council chambers and in pass-through reports. That has been happening for 7 years. And, you know, this is a very unique opportunity. It's, and it will definitely garner some good ideas, a different way of thinking when we approach the strategic plan, something that we wanted to do last year and the year before. If you're going to be cynical about it, you know, that's unfortunate, because I don't think that is that's certainly not where I'm coming from on that. And
Councilor Merlihan, I didn't hear cynicism, but if I could just get you to step back for a moment and just tell us what the cost of that particular event is that you're interested in. Like, are we talking $2,000? Are we talking $10,000? What are you looking at?
Yeah, the event is $3,000, and then there would be accommodation on that and travel, but flights are dirt cheap out of Flair these days.
So 3,000 plus flights plus accommodations, and how many days is it?
I think David thought the entire investment would be $5,000 per person.
Okay, Councilor McMillan.
Really quickly, yes. Sorry, Councilor Merlihan, I'm not being cynical. I'm not accusing you of attaching this to the election. I'm talking about the amount of runway left from when anybody were to get back from the conference until the next election. So I'm not accusing anybody of electioneering or attaching this to the election. I'm not being cynical. Again, I am not against professional development. You can give me all the benefits of professional development. Again, I'm on board with that. I'm talking specifically and only about the amount of time from the end of any conference that we would go to this year until the start of a new council. That's it. It's not cynicism at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mr. Patrick there talked about, you know, an idea, a spark that, you know, is shared with senior management and explored after that. That's all you need a lot of times is the idea and the implementation. And there'll be, I believe it's an exclusive kind of group of politicians coming together that all kind of are sharing that kind of vision and all bringing it back to their municipalities to try and get that spark. And it, yeah, you're right. It might not be me. I haven't put my papers in. I haven't even thought of the election yet. So that is down the road for me. So anyway.
Okay. So we've been discussing 3 line items: meeting expenses, special events, and training. They've all been significantly reduced from the 2019 actuals. what does council want to do with those lines? I think Councillor Shantz, you were suggesting we could take some of the money out of one of the lines to, I think that was for funding the Hope Springs piece. So there's a couple of places that Hope Spring dollar amount can come from.
Yeah, correct. That's what I was talking about. I guess I was looking at the past couple of years and how we had spent it and how we haven't spent it. That's the only thing I was looking at. If we're going to start having some of those events, or you think it's possible, then maybe we should leave the dollars in there. I guess we don't have a crystal ball, but I know at one point we were talking about not doing some of those events in the past. So whether we do it going forward, I don't know, but it was just a suggestion.
Okay. Councillor Martin?
Thank you. I would suggest I would leave the lines the way they are. I can't believe that we spend half an hour discussing one line item of $8,000. We spend more than that in our grants, which we get nothing for. Just think about it. So I'm quite happy leaving those amounts the way they are.
Okay. Councillor McMillan?
Could we leave the line item as it is and then not commit to the Hope Springs grant, but see if we get to November? I think Mayor Shantz, you brought up a really good point too about professional development for a new council at the end of 2022. There does need to be some money for that. And so maybe that comes out of, well, it definitely would come out of this, but maybe we leave the item the way it is, but by the end of the year, if it's not spent, instead of this going into general reserves, maybe council could decide at that point what to do with it.
Yeah, I think that can work fine. We have some other options, as we said, for you said the Hope Springs. I'm not sure that's what you meant. I think you meant the training, right?
I mean, if it didn't get used for, like, if we left the line item where it is, but the actual ends up looking like 2021 or 2020, and we've got 12,000 extra dollars, could we in November decide to approve that request from Hope Springs?
Oh, I see. Jeff?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, I just to pick up on what council is discussing now, we can look into if a grant is possible to be decided on in the future, if that does help council's decision. But I also wanted to bring to your attention that we typically pay for council orientation costs. So the training that we bring in for the new council from the election reserve. So that's not something that that has to be paid for under the training and development budget.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, we certainly don't have to decide on where the training money is getting used tonight. That's a discussion for another night. So tonight we just need to decide if we're going to leave the 8,000 and leave the meeting expenses as they are. And I think we had asked Richard to come back with a realignment of the grants and where that funding can come from. He's heard our discussions, and in his ultimate wisdom, he will come back with some suggestions, and we can rehash this again on Thursday. Is that fair? David, did you want to weigh in? No? Okay. Okay, so I'm sort of getting a sense to just leave the lines as they are for tonight. I'm seeing some nodding, some thumbs up, and some sort of, yeah, okay. All right, let's leave them as they are for tonight. We do have another night to sort of look at all the details and the ins and outs of where we land. Is there anything else on the council budget? Okay. Thank you. Then we are pretty well finished. I have a public notice to read, and this is notice of intent to discuss water and wastewater budget and rates. This is not a motion, this is just a statement that the Council of the Township of Woolwich gives public notice of its intent to discuss the 2022 draft water and wastewater budget and changes to the water and wastewater rates on January 24th, 2022 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers situated at 24 Church Street West in Elmira, and on Zoom and live stream to the Township of Woolwich YouTube channel. I'm just going to ask 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
It's a regular council meeting, so 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Okay. Before we adjourn for the evening, Mr. Okay, Councilor Merlehan, go ahead, and then we'll get Mr. Petherick to summarize.
Okay, thanks. I actually had a bunch of things here for information to come back for next week. Would now be an appropriate time, or before Richard?
Yes, yes, it would.
Okay. So I have a few thoughts here that we could think about and then talk about next week. So as of Friday afternoon, I got an email from the project manager at the region for the Church Street East reconstruction. The region has decided to split that project into two. Over 2 years now, and I don't know how that affects the funding. Right now, it's 800,000 from water, 400,000 from sewer. I'm not sure if that goes ahead because the first phase is, I think, going up to the bridge or up to Riverside. So Arthur Street to Riverside, they're going to do the work in that section. And then I think that information, or the waterworks and stuff, I think is being extended out like over the bridge to George, and that would be in the second year. And then there's about 400,000 in development charges going to that project. I don't know how that affects the budget, but I'd like to see if it does get put over 2 years, just whether or not some of that money can remain in the 2022 budget, and some of it then would continue into the 2023 and maybe free up some money for some of those unfunded projects that we have there that we're going to be going into debentures for. So that was the first item. Jared would probably be able to give you more information. I didn't get to do a follow-up to see how that affects the years of the other projects. So, you know, Church Street West, Arthur Street, the main street, plus down to Martin Lane over the next, 4 years. So I'll follow up with them later. Mentioned before about the COVID relief. I think I'm more on board just taking it out altogether of the budget. So I guess we can talk about that. In the infrastructure development section, right now, we have 4 roads people added to the mix. I wanted to see if council would consider maybe onboarding 2 roads people, have them start in April, and then have 2 more roads people pre-approved to start in January for the next for 2023 to start being able to do snow plow and all that. We can keep, there'll be another water person and an EA, but maybe spreading out the onboarding of those 2. I'm saying that they're needed, but maybe we can do this just over an extended period. And then all the associated costs of the machines that you add the hours and stuff to throughout those budget line items, bring those down to accommodate the 2 people. When you're onboarding 4 people at the same time and it automatically doubles your department, there's going to be some headaches in that. And I'm thinking if we can just spread that out, it wouldn't even be over a year, but it would be over 2 different budgets that might ease some of the issues. in the recreation department, I'm wondering if across the board we could look at -2%, just as a baseline, just because it isn't, the budget was prepared with full ramping up, full activation of all the sites, and that's not already happening. I'm wondering if we can consider those, and just, I don't know what those numbers are, what they would turn out to be, but I'd be interested just if we could have some baseline numbers that we can look at on that. And then the Maryhill Fire Station, I wonder if we can talk more about that project, and the, I guess the square footage of what's being proposed, and I know there's been Maryhill Fire Department people that have reached out to council with concerns in the costing, and whether or not we could look at that project and see, just make sure that we have all the information so that we can make the best decision on that. And I'm all for seeing that project move forward, but I'm also all for having all the information before council so that we can make the best decision. So that would be, I think, everything on my list. And then I would have a question about the funding for Maryhill, whether or not development charges are part of that project and whether they would be appropriate for that. That's it.
Okay. Before I go to Mr. Petherick, is there further information that any of the other councillors want for our deliberations on Thursday? Okay, Mr. Petherick.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I guess the quick question, or at least a quick answer on the Maryhill, is there is some development charge money, so about 50% covered by development charges, and that is has been in our background study. So that is kind of been vetted through a public process in order to utilize development charges for that, and it is a low amount. Because there was growth, albeit a smaller extent, just pretty recently in Maryhill. So there is development charges, but I did hear that we will be coming back next budget meeting on Thursday with some more information for council on the Maryhill project.
Okay, thank you.
And I think just to sum up a couple of things that besides what Councilor Merlehan just said from additional information he's looking for, and even to have some discussion at our next budget session, at least tonight, did capture the fact that, we're going to come back and talk to council about the Hope Springs grant request, and the fact that we're going to be adding in the additional $1,500 for the seniors, which is being offset by the COVID relief fund monies that we set aside in 2021. So those are the big things that council has decided tonight.
Okay. Is there anything else from Councillor Shantz?
I guess if we're giving a laundry list of what we wanted to talk about on Thursday night, I would like added to that then the 1.5 debenture for the Peel Street Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn? Okay. Councillor Martin.
Okay, quickly. Are we going to see spreadsheets on Thursday night to see what a project like the Peel Street Bridge is going to cost us over 15 years? Yes? Okay.
So, yes.
And maybe some other project as well.
Mr.
Yeah,
Kethler.
through you, Madam Mayor, I apologize. Yeah, so I'll be developing and actually sharing a spreadsheet with council on what the debenture is going to look like on a per project basis, and then kind of what it would look like not only from a I guess an interest cost perspective, but then in its entirety over a period of time. So multiple periods of time, depending if it's 10, 15, or 20 years, just to give council some flavor of what these debenture repayments would look like.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
And Madam Mayor, I think the other thing that I will be providing council as well ahead of Thursday's meeting is council was looking to see some scenarios of what some compounding scenarios would look like for the infrastructure levy over certain years at different levels, whether it's 0.5%, 1%, 2%, that type of stuff. So I'm just finishing off that spreadsheet, so that'll be available for council for Thursday as well. Ahead of Thursday's council is what I would like to give to you guys.
I was going to say those kinds of things would be nice to have ahead of time so we can sort of digest them and get familiar with them. Okay. Councillor McMillan.
Will there be a tutorial on how to read spreadsheets?
You can press the help button. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn to meet again in special session on Thursday, January 20th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Moved by Councillor Shant, seconded by Councillor McMillan. All those in favor? That is carried. We will see you on Thursday. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our meeting tonight on our YouTube live stream. Council members, I'll remind you to stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And good night.